What is going on today, guys? It is another video from Hazmat Trucker, and today I just wanted to talk about what I think the one and only thing that is going to hold you back in your trucking career is. And so what do I mean by that? For me, it was my mindset. So for those of you who don't know, I have been trucking for about 4.5 years now, and for the only past 2 years or so, I was being intentional with my trucking career. I was treating it as a career. The prior 2.5 years, I was treating this whole industry, my time in this industry, as a job, not a career. And that is the difference between thinking in the short term versus thinking in the long term. So, what do I mean by that? I came into the trucking industry not knowing what I was going to do. I didn't research into any different types of niches or different types of fields within trucking. I was flying by the seat of my pants, and I didn't have a long-term strategy of how to get where I wanted to go, even if I knew where I wanted to go. All of that was out the window. And what were the consequences for doing so? Because I was stuck in the short-term mindset, I was only thinking about the next week, maybe the next month, really doubtfully even the next year. I was only concerned with the next week ahead, the next pay period, so I could solve my current problems that way. However, that was not just within my trucking career that I thought that way. That was the short-term mindset, was how I looked at life as a whole. And so not only did my career path suffer because I was just going from job to job without any purpose or any thought into what I was doing, I was also carrying that into my personal life, especially with my finances. And so it was ultimately a confluence of bad circumstances that I had made for myself that came to a head that forced me to start thinking in the long term. And so what do I mean by that? So in 2022, early that year, I decided to buy a car because I was stuck in the short term and I wanted a new car, even though I couldn't really afford it. So I went to my bank, I pulled out most of my savings, and I spent most of that money on a car that I couldn't really afford, not thinking in the long term that that could really screw me over. So fast forward about 6 months into 2022, and my son needed a dental procedure done that I didn't have most of the money for, because as the saying goes, what can go wrong will go wrong. So because I didn't have that savings, I was then forced into thinking about, okay, well, how am I going to dig myself out of this hole, number one? And then number two, how am I going to prevent myself from getting into this hole again in the future? And from there, I started thinking about how I can make more money into trucking, and I started to develop a long-term career path into trucking instead of just treating the trucking industry as just another job, just another paycheck. And so I started researching what are some ways that I can make extra money in trucking. And so I ultimately found the route of going into the hazmat side of trucking, and I got my hazmat, I got my tanker certification, and shortly after that I went into the oil fields. After I'd gotten into the oil fields, I started doing even further research into hazmat trucking and what all sorts of different kinds of niches there are within hazmat trucking in general to make the most amount of money. And when I was researching that, I ultimately stumbled across KDS Trucking's videos on hauling fuel for Gemini Motor Transport. I started eating up all of his content, and then I found Dirty Broke 215's channel and started eating up all of his content. And not only did I start researching and eating up all of their content, I started to follow the guidelines and the advice that they give in order to be hired here at Gemini Motor Transport. And so that long-term plan to go into fuel hauling, and specifically for Gemini Motor Transport, was starting to form in my mind. It was starting to form as a map, a roadmap, that I was going to follow specific things in order to get to where I wanted to go. So that was the catalyst that forced me to change my mindset from short-term thinking to long-term thinking. So if you're wanting to get into this industry, or if you're in this industry already, please figure out what you want to do if you don't know already. Do more research in how you can get there. Lay out a roadmap to how you can get there and start following up on those steps to get there. And hopefully you can learn from my mistake of wasting time within my trucking career instead of wandering about aimlessly in the proverbial desert. So, with that being said, if you guys found this video helpful, please give me a like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Ciao.